Nigerian self-made billionaire Femi Otedola spent years painstakingly building businesses that placed him in the 1% of the top 1% of the nation's elite. Then, like an avalanche, his businesses came crashing down, leaving him billions of dollars in debt. In a story worth telling 1,000 times over, Femi Otedola bounced back. But how exactly does one go from having the entire oil sector at his beck and call to being over $1 billion in debt? This is a story of how Femi Otedola bounced back after losing nearly everything.
The Otedola lineage are no strangers to wealth. In fact, it can be argued that Femi Otedola's father, Sir Michael Otedola, paved the way for his son's immense wealth. He was a former governor of Lagos State and was an established player in the oil industry. Unsurprisingly, his son Femi Otedola took after his interest in oil, but that would be in his later years. Initially, he wanted to be a Catholic Reverend Father, but that dream died after he realized that Reverend Fathers were not allowed to get married or have children. After spending a few years at the family printing press business, Femi Otedola set out on his own path. He founded Center Force, an investment and trading company. It was during his days running this company that he was struck by a multi-billion-dollar idea. After his diesel supplier failed to meet up with his company's order, Mr. Otedola decided to get into the diesel supply business. He would buy diesel from a retailer and sell to the companies that ran on diesel. At the time, he was being supplied by the largest retail depot of diesel in the area. After a while, he decided to buy that particular depot. Femi Otedola is an ambitious man and also takes calculated risks. He approached Jim Ovie, the CEO of Zenith Bank at the time, and requested a loan of $20 million to finance the purchase. His request was granted, and soon after, through his company, Xenon Petroleum Oil and Gas, he gained control of over 91% of the oil market. Business was good, so he purchased 3 cargo ships, which he named after his father, his mother, and his wife. Business was so good that Mr. Otedola had to expand into other sectors. To champion this, he took a loan of $1.5 billion from a bank. He bought a 28.7% stake in African Petroleum. After a while, he pumped more funds into the company, which raised the stakes to 56%, making him the largest stakeholder. He rebranded the company and named it Forte Oil. He also invested heavily in Nigeria's financial and banking sector. At the time, Mr. Otedola was the second largest shareholder in Zenith Bank, the largest individual shareholder in UBA, a major shareholder in African Finance Commission, the chairman of Transcorp, and also a big shareholder in Mobil Oil, and ultimately, the largest importer of diesel in Nigeria. In 2009, Forbes named him among the richest people in the world, with an estimated net worth of $1.2 billion, the second Nigerian to make the list after Aliko Dangote. In 2008, a shipment carrying 1 million tons of diesel belonging to Femi Otedola set sail on his way to Nigeria. Femi Otedola, the chairman of Forte Oil, according to Forbes, owned over 500 gas stations across the country at the time. He had achieved all that in just 7 years. His fall was as rapid as his rise. While the shipment was still on the high seas, the price of oil dropped significantly from $146 to $34. This was mainly due to the financial crisis of 2008, which affected every sector. The crisis caused the deflation of services and assets such as oil and natural gas. This led to decreased demand for oil and gas, which ultimately led to decreased prices of oil and gas. Economic measures that were put in place by the government to tackle deflation increased inflation, which led companies to raise capital at a time of loss. The high pressure situation knocked up interest rates, which grossly devalued the naira. According to the CNBC, Femi Otedola lost $480 million to the dip in oil prices, $285 million to the devaluation of the naira, another $320 million from accumulated interests, and $160 million when stocks crashed suddenly. Mr. Otedola was $1.2 billion in the red. His debt was sold by his bank to AMCON, a corporation set up by the Nigerian government to buy up distressed loans. His bank shaved off $400 million off of his $1.2 billion debt, leaving him with $800 million to pay back. He was offered a restructuring deal by AMCON, which would have seen the terms of his loan agreement restructured, but he turned down the deal. He decided to pay off everything he owed at one go. Mr. FEMI Otedola was forced to sell off most of his property and assets. Among them were 184 flat apartments, his shares in the banking sector, his shares in Mobile and other oil companies. He also relinquished his chairmanship at Transcorp Hilton. In the end, he was left with just his office space and a 34% stake in African Petroleum. He was forced to start all over again, and in 2014, just 5 years later, he was back on the Forbes list as one of the richest men in the world, with an updated net worth of $1.8 billion. These days, he is wiser in his dealings and has championed ways to cushion his wealth against such unforeseen circumstances. His net worth constantly fluctuates thanks to the ever-changing prices in oil. However, it always rests above the $1 billion mark. It significantly dropped to $560 million sometime in 2016, but has since then risen to above $1 billion. He is married with 4 children and also has a car collection that is said to be worth over $8 million. He also has a massive yacht which costs around $19.6 million. In addition to all this, there is also rumored to be a private jet, but the price is unknown. He may own all these luxuries, but his most important asset is his mind. A mind that enabled him overcome such adversity that would have crippled weaker men.